وأقول في القرآن ما جاءت به آياته فهو الكريم المنزال وأقول قال الله جل جلاله والمصطفى الهادي ولا أتأول.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to welcome all of the parents who are signed in and joining us this evening on our parents webinar as part of the AMAU Junior program. Today is a little bit different from our previous sessions. Our previous sessions have all had topics, specific things that we've spoken about. Today is open Q&A. And we really want to try to, get to the bottom of the questions that you still have, things that maybe you feel haven't been answered yet. And so, inshallah ta'ala, we'd like to open it up for the parents to ask questions. I think at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, we will take questions via the Q&A feature, which is a text-based feature. Perhaps later on in the session, we can take some audio questions. But I think for now, we'll start with the questions that are submitted via the Q&A audio feature. I think while I'm waiting for a few questions to go through, I'll probably give you a little bit of an update. We are approaching the end of our first, almost like a first term really, because we've taken the topic of tafsir and the topic of aqidah. And we are approaching the end of those two topics and sort of getting ready to transition into the next set of topics, inshallah. I'm told we have 3 lessons left, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that, but something like that left in terms of tafsir al-aqidah. Now that presents us with some unique challenges, which to be honest are pretty much to be expected, but it does present us with some fairly unique challenges. So one of those challenges that we're going to have is that we still have quite a lot of material to finish. And for tafsir, we have a pretty reasonable solution, inshallah, which is that we have basically got the 2 teachers meeting in the middle. So what's happened is that I started with the younger children from Surah An-Nas, and by the end of it, inshallah ta'ala, we reach Surah Al-Qari'ah, or perhaps Surah maybe Al-Adiyat, something like that. So inshallah, we hope that Shaykh Abdul Rahman will kind of reach the same place from the other side, from Surah Al-Duha with the older kids. And so what we'll try to do is to make the material available to both. So basically the older kids who want to finish off what they haven't done, inshallah ta'ala, they'll be able to do that through my classes. They'll have access to those. And likewise, if any of the younger kids want to go into the other material, it is probably, maybe a little bit older than what is perfect for their age group, but the material will be made available. That's a good solution to the problem. In terms of aqidah, I think from the beginning we kind of had in our mind that we might struggle to finish 200 questions. I think it's more realistic. We may finish somewhere between 50 and 75 questions in Aqidah out of 200. So I think what we will try to do, inshallah ta'ala, is we will try to record the remaining questions as one class, not as an older and younger, just as a single class. And we try to put those either on sort of an unlisted YouTube link or maybe the Vimeo backend or something like that, inshallah, the portal. We'll find a way to do that, inshallah. So the plan is basically that we will finish off the content, but the classes on those topics are going to finish because of time constraints. Those are going to finish. I don't know, it's always a debate that we have between, among the teachers. Should we always endeavor to finish everything, or should we endeavor to make sure the students have a better learning experience and understand? And I think, the moment we kind of, especially getting used to the students and becoming accustomed to them, what we wanted to do is to make sure the students really do understand and really do benefit. And inshallah ta'ala, we hope, and from what we've seen, that has taken place, inshallah. So we will find a way to complete the different parts of the material for those who want to. I think that's important. But at the same time, we're not going to worry too much about, about finishing it all inside of a short space of time. Okay, our first question. How can we help our kids not to get distracted during online classes, as it's so easy to switch to other online activities while classes are on? And often kids look up things online that are problematic. Advice would be appreciated. So I think there are probably 3 areas that we could help or that we could suggest in this. And I don't know, my suggestions may be a little bit vague, but I will do my best. The first is parental supervision. Really, there isn't anything that beats it, It doesn't mean that you have to sit there with your children for every minute of the class, but just being around the kids, letting them watch the class in front of people, having the speaker on the headphones rather than the headphones, so that, it's something that is, it's clear that there is some supervision for them. Because I think when there isn't supervision, and this is when I'm talking about younger kids, of course, when there isn't any supervision, it's very, very easy for kids to switch and say, yeah, I'm watching my class, but actually they're playing games or they're watching something on YouTube or whatever. I think one of the things that helps with that is the fact that the class is provided through an independent portal. It's not provided through YouTube, so it's not easy for them to click off it. But at the same time, it's not like while they're watching AMAU, there's videos popping up and adverts popping up. It's completely advert free and it's completely independent of YouTube. So that's a good thing. At the same time, it is possible for people to get distracted. We tend to say, put it on full screen, put the speaker on, maybe sit the kids a little bit back from the computer so that they can actually just sit with their notepad and they're in a place where they're being somewhat supervised. It doesn't have to be like constant monitoring, but they're being somewhat supervised. That's one thing. The second thing that we can do is technology-based solutions. So I'm a big fan of this. And there are so many levels that you can do with this. Your internet service provider often has a website or a portal where you can adjust certain settings. The computer you use has settings that you can change, such as on Apple, on Apple, what do we have? It's called screen time on Apple. On Macs, iPads, it's called screen time. And you can limit what your kids can access at certain times or in certain situations. And you can make it such that they cannot access anything other than AMAU at that particular time. The instructions for doing that is probably beyond what we can cover in this short webinar for the parents, but it's worth looking into. Similar things exist for Windows-based PCs, Android-based tablets and phones and things like that. If you look at parental controls, if you just type in the device your child is using, for example, iPad, parental controls, you'll get loads of tutorials on how to lock things down and limit things. From the ISP, you can often block, because you talk about problematic things, looking at problematic things online, you can often block certain genres of websites. On my ISP, we have violence, adult themes, drugs, all of that is alcohol, gambling, the entire genre is blocked. So on any device within the house, nobody can get access to anything like that. It's automatically blocked. So all of these technology solutions together can also assist. There are even technology solutions which help to focus on a particular thing. So I can't remember the name of them, but there are some apps and there are some software you can install for Windows, you can install it for Mac, which basically allows you to focus. So if you try typing the name of your device like iPad, focus software, and you should get a list of programs that are there and apps and things. And basically what they do is they stop you being able to click on other things. They focus you on the particular application you're using at the time. again, you could try something like that as well. That's the second thing. The third thing, and we can't, especially as the child gets older, is honestly to sit down with them and to talk to them and to sort of engage with them as to why they feel distracted, and to help them to understand the value of the classes, to talk to them about the hadith of Hanzala al-Asadi, when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, "Walakin ya Hanzala sa'atan wa sa'ah." But oh Hanzala, there is a time for this and there is a time for that. All of these things, talking to the kids about, look, it is your responsibility. At the end of the day, you're going to be asked about it. Encouraging them to have that muraqabah of Allah. Like Allah is watching you, even if your mom and dad are not watching you. And reviewing, what they did, looking through the internet history, looking through, okay, what were you doing at this time? I noticed that during your class, you switched onto a games website. And I don't want to have to put the blocks, and I don't want to have to put, all of this, like this software to control your activities. But, if you're going to be switching to gaming software during the time of your class, I'm going to have to get stricter with you. So maybe we can just have an understanding that, those things are not going to be used at the time of, so on like that. These are the three aspects that I can suggest. I don't know, I feel like it's not a perfect solution. I'm constantly adapting to my kids' use of gadgets in different ways. I'm constantly sort of talking to them, constantly observing how they use them, and constantly looking at different ways we can use technology to monitor and control internet usage for everyone's safety in the house. But those are some of the suggestions I have for what it's worth, and Allah knows best. Okay. Second question. As a parent, I really understand the importance of learning Arabic, but I struggle to find a program we can follow as a family so we can learn all together. Any suggestions? I have been working on just such a program, and I really hope, insha'Allah ta'ala, it won't be long before it will be launched with AMAU, inshallah. Now, one of the things I've really tried to do with this program, and I don't know because I haven't finished it, I can't tell you how successful I've been in it, but I've really, really tried to make it as easy and accessible as possible, and to make it paced according to the student, and to make it suitable for children as well as adults. And I totally agree. I think that learning Arabic is probably the single greatest thing that you can do to facilitate your children seeking knowledge in a more advanced way and in a more detailed way than what is available, just for everybody on YouTube. I believe that there is nothing that I can think of that is better than teaching them the Arabic language, because instantly their access to knowledge becomes, that you can't measure. It just becomes, huge access to knowledge, to scholars, to books, to material, to the Qur'an, to the Sunnah that they didn't have before. No matter how much we provide in English, it's only the tiniest fraction of what's available in Arabic. And I personally believe that Arabic programs are failing this, mostly speaking, are failing a certain category of students. We do very well with Arabic programs that are full-time, that are on-site, that are often in an Arabic-speaking country. Those programs work very, very well. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, I believe the UAE has one as well. These programs work very, very well, and they have a very good track record. But we're not doing very well when it comes to Arabic programs for people at home, for people who don't have a lot of time, for people who've maybe struggled with a lot of grammar and rules. And so I approached my Arabic program. It's from scratch. It's not based on Medina books. It's not based on Al-Arabiya Bayni Yadayk. It's completely written from zero. And the idea was to provide a program that gets over some of those hurdles. A program that's designed for people learning from home from the first day. And alhamdulillah, we've recorded many hours of footage so far, and I believe it is ready for launch in the very near future, inshallah ta'ala. I don't have an exact date on it, but it's available for launch very soon. Of course, when it does launch, it will be at a very beginner's level. The intermediate levels will take some time before they're ready, but it's based around simple learning of vocabulary, lots and lots of example content, as little grammar as possible, and as much practice as possible. And it's based around the idea, it uses some elements of second language acquisition theory and things like that, as to how people can learn languages really quickly and easily, and inshallah in a fun way. So, it's still a work in progress, but I'm sure there are other programs. I'm sure there are. And until then, I would honestly say that if a parent can afford it, it really isn't a bad idea to get an Arabic teacher from somewhere like Egypt who teaches over Skype or over Zoom. And really, it's not like really expensive, but I do understand that it's not always feasible for everybody. It's not cheap, but it's not really, really expensive. You can get a really good teacher, and maybe the whole family could be involved in that. Also, I would say that while you're waiting for the program to start, one of the best ways to get the whole family involved in Arabic is through vocabulary. Because vocabulary, anybody can learn. You don't really need a teacher. Get yourself a book like My First 1,000 Words in Arabic. Don't worry about it being Fusha or these words have to be from the Qur'an. Or just for the whole family to learn 1,000 words in Arabic, it's an amazing thing. And if those are words from the Qur'an, even better. But even if they're not, even if it's just words for things around the house, and even if as a family, we just make an agreement that all the words we learn, we're not going to use English for them, right? We're going to use Arabic. So it's going to be like, sit down on your kursi. Even if I don't know how to say sit down, but at least I know how to say kursi is a chair. So, sit down on your kursi or something like that. Or pass me your qalam. At least that will introduce kids into the Arabic language, inshallah ta'ala, and it will provide a really, really good way for kids to get into the language. The other thing is watching and listening to Arabic content as a family, even if you don't understand it. One of the things that I really feel like kind of misled by it, to be honest with you, when I first started to learn Arabic is I wanted to go and sit in the lessons with the scholars. And a lot of people around me who were more senior than me were telling me, don't go. You don't have enough Arabic. You're not going to understand anything they say. You're just going to sit there, wasting your time. Learn Arabic first and then go and sit. And wallahi, I really believe that advice is completely wrong. It's completely wrong on so many levels. I don't even have time to explain how many ways that advice is wrong. But it is. Because you acquire so much language by just exposing yourself to the language. So it doesn't have to be, like a sheikh or a scholar. I mean, if there are some, suitable things that you could watch, even a documentary or something like that in Arabic, with, something that doesn't have music or haram elements in it, something like a nature documentary or something like that. Even that, the words you'll pick up, the Arabic words people will pick up just by sitting and listening. Some of the scholars who speak very slowly and easily, just the amount of Arabic that you and the kids will pick up as a family, really it's worth it. It really is. And actually what you'll find is your Arabic won't ever improve until you start doing that. Because no matter how much vocabulary you learn, you need to get access to the language and exposure to the language as well. Ideally though, according to the theory, the exposure to the language should be at the level, at the level of Arabic that you're at right now. So if you're just learning your first words, ideally the content you would be watching would be like, or listening to, would be kind of like appropriate to that. One of the things I found helps a lot is children's books. Books for 5-year-olds, books for 3-year-olds, books for 6-year-olds, stuff like that. That can be quite helpful as well. I would say cartoons, but it's just so hard to find anything halal. They're mostly just music and all different kinds of things. But where possible, any things like that, it would really honestly help people to pick up the language, and Allah knows best. Is it possible to add something within each class so the kids have some sort of action step to implement the knowledge they seek in each class? I really do think it's worthwhile. I think that it's really important that children learn the practical application of knowledge. It can be difficult when you're trying to get through content. It is difficult when you're trying to get through content to always remember that we need to take a step back and ask ourselves how we can implement this knowledge in a practical sense in our lives. I try to include as much of it as I can. And I know Sheikh Abdurrahman also tries to include as much as he can as well. But I think it's worth it, inshallah ta'ala, to try to just give a little more emphasis on the topic of how to practically implement the knowledge that you're given, how to make a difference with it, whether it's tafsir, or whether, for example, we just finished the tafsir of Surah Al-Ma'un. So even if that, comes towards, sort of like visit an orphan, give someone a small kindness, give your neighbor like an egg or like some spoons of sugar or something like that. Like this kind of like idea of al-ma'un, the small acts of kindness, pick somebody's bag up for them or something like that. Yeah, there are definitely ways that we could make that more practical. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll try to do that. We'll try to ask the AMAU team to make a note of it, and we'll try to incorporate it into the work that we do, inshallah. If a child has an affliction that's having impact on his education, some days it can be extremely challenging. Would you advise to push on with the education or leave learning to another day? That's a tough one. It does depend on the child's sort of circumstances and the kind of condition, the kind of sort of difficulty that they're going through. I would say that it's not really feasible to continually leave learning to another day. It's not really feasible to say, okay, tomorrow, the next day, no, we'll do it next week, we'll do it next week, we'll do it next month. And if it is an affliction in which the shaitan is involved, then in all honesty, it's probably just feeding into the wishes of the shaitan. But there are days where, as a parent, it can be really hard to cope and you feel overwhelmed. And on those days, it's okay. If you are teaching your children in a flexible way, it's okay to have a day where you say, okay, look, today we're going to take a little break, and inshallah ta'ala, we're going to come back to this tomorrow. But the problem is that we can't make a habit of it. And if there is a habit of it, it just becomes a constant thing where we're just all the time saying to our kids, okay, not today, it's all right. If you're having a bad day, it's fine. We'll do it tomorrow. And it just every day becomes tomorrow. And then the shaitan gets involved and just every day becomes tomorrow. But occasionally when they are really frustrated, even if it's not an affliction, even if it's just like a child who just gets frustrated, and they're just like, look, today I don't want to go. I would always try to encourage them to go and say, look, come on, it's your class, you're not allowed to miss it. Sit down. After class, we go somewhere nice. Come on. What was it you were asking me for the other day? You wanted to buy this candy or ice cream, or okay, we'll go. But first you sit for your class. But if it's just not happening and they're really, really upset, then I would probably say, I don't know what Sheikh Abdurrahman would do. I have a feeling Sheikh Abdurrahman would just push them no matter what. But me personally, I would say, okay, fair enough. You take a break, but you promise me tomorrow we're going to do it. And that's the kind of approach I would take. And I wouldn't let it happen, day after day, as hard as it is. Because I don't think it's feasible to continually delay their education. That's, of course, you have to know a bit about the situation, but that's a generic answer for what it's worth, and Allah knows best. I've asked my son to make notes in whatever capacity he can. This will help him concentrate better. It would help if the teachers emphasize that. Could you, as a teacher, make this request to them? Well, I should have like a checklist, like a pilot, like before you fly the aircraft. I should have like, make sure we ask them to write the notes, make sure that we ask them to. It is true. Wallah, it's not, your suggestion is completely valid, yeah. To ask them, look, everybody try to take notes as best you can. Many times the kids ask, like there's a lot of times in Q&A the kids ask, I'm struggling to take notes. I feel like my notes are not very good. And we always say to them that, your notes are personal to you. You just do the best you can. Try not to, I never think it's a good idea to overly write notes. Like I think if you write too many notes, you lose the content. I much prefer, like even when I used to study with the scholars in Medina before, and for me, I would never like obsessively write notes. Like it would be, I'm writing notes and I'm recording. And anything I miss in my notes, I'm gonna listen from the recording. But the problem is that sometimes you're so worried about catching every last word that you end up losing the content completely. So I think it's a balance. I've told the kids a good few times in the classes that it's a balance between making notes and becoming kind of like obsessed by it and losing the content of the class. So still paying attention, making notes that help you to keep your attention. And if you miss something, you've got it recorded. Just go back and watch it again. And inshallah ta'ala, you'll catch up with it, on the second time around or the third time around, inshallah. And Allah knows best. But I will really try, inshallah ta'ala, to remember to encourage the students to make notes, inshallah. 2 questions. My daughter joined AMAU a bit late. She only gets time to watch classes from the missed ones, 2 to 3 videos weekly. I personally don't want her to rush through so as to comprehend and digest what she's learnt. Now, the result sent last month by AMAU reflected 0 assessment and she was very sad and upset. And she's been trying to speed up her studying since then. Can you give advice on a balanced approach on this? I 100%, honestly, 100% agree that don't rush. Rushing doesn't bring anything good. وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ عَجُولًا. Mankind always tries to rush. The Prophet ﷺ, he said to his Sahaba one day, he said, وَلَكِنَّكُمْ قَوْمٌ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. You people are always trying to rush. And there are some narrations that indicate that rushing is from the shaitan. So I would honestly say, don't worry about the assessment. The assessment is designed around someone who's been studying the course from the beginning and has been attending regularly. The assessment doesn't matter at all. Concentrate on getting the benefit from the knowledge, internalizing it, understanding it, and inshallah ta'ala, the assessments will come. You take the assessment again, 2 months down the line, and you'll be getting a very, very good grade. I honestly, don't be upset about the assessments. Assessments, it doesn't reflect, it doesn't reflect anything. It's just there to help you gauge your progress according to the students who've been with the program from the beginning. So there's nothing wrong with that. I would honestly advise to just continue to go slowly, to concentrate on getting the benefit from the lesson. And that's part of what we talk about niyyah, sincerity and intention. A really big part of intention is not studying for exams or assessments, which is what we see. I mean, even when I was studying full-time in Medina, the same thing, like you get into a mode of studying for the assessment. It's like, if I pass the exam, I've done well. And if I don't pass the exam, I haven't done well. But what our teachers used to say to us is, you study for the knowledge, not for the exam. The exam is just a reflection of where you are right now. But otherwise, you study for the knowledge. It's the knowledge you want. It's that you can actually say, I know what that teacher was saying and I've taken it on board and I've understood it. And the exam is just a snapshot of where you are on that particular day at that particular time. So I think all of our kids need to be encouraged. It's not that the assessment is bad. It's just that It's just a snapshot of where you were on that particular day at that particular time, but it doesn't reflect the amount, the fact that the goal is the knowledge itself. And Allah knows best. How can children get help when they don't understand the lesson while it's on and they want the Ustadh to repeat what they didn't understand? It's a tough one. I personally find it really difficult as a teacher when students are constantly asking to repeat. And the problem is, it's not one person. It comes alhamdulillah, the AMAU junior class is brilliant. The kids do really well. But some of my adult classes, the whole class is just, Ustadh, can you repeat the ayah? Ustadh, what was the first word of the hadith? Ustadh, where did you say the hadith was? Ustadh, what is that number again? Ustadh, you made 3 points earlier on in the lesson. What was the third one? Well, it drives me insane. I'm ready just to block everybody from the chat and close the class and just go and sit in a dark room. It drives me mad because alhamdulillah with the kids, they're amazing. It's very rare, but with the adults, it's just constantly. And I keep telling them, Juan, the class is recorded. If you miss something, go back again and listen. Now, I don't mind if something wasn't understood, because that I actually have no problem with. Something that wasn't understood should be repeated. So what I mean by that is somebody says, I heard what you said, but I don't really understand what you mean. And anytime those questions get posted on my chat in my lesson, I repeat it. I'm sorry, Ustadh, I didn't understand. You was talking about al-ma'un and you said it was the small acts of kindness, but I don't know what you mean by small acts of kindness. That I will always repeat. I have no problem because they've heard what I've said, but they've just not quite understood it and I need to say it again. But what is really problematic is the ones who are trying to write it down or trying to remember it and they forgot one point and it's just a constant stream of repetition. It just doesn't work. So I think that the students are always welcome to put a question up there with things that they don't understand and even repetition. And the AMAU team, I always ask the AMAU team to select important questions for me and to highlight them for the class. So when they do that, when they do select them and when they do highlight them, then I try my best to repeat them as much as I can. But where I just find it difficult is when it just disrupts the whole flow of the lesson. Okay, so I'm right in the middle of explaining. I've got a really important point. And the next point I'm going to tell you is the most important thing in the class. And it is, Ustadh, can you repeat what you said in point number 3? It's really hard. Wallahi, I can't think. It's one of the hardest things I have to deal with as a teacher in the adult classes. So I would say that if it's a case of I just need to listen to this again, then that's why we have recorded videos for. And that's why they can rewind, they can listen again, rewind, listen again. But when it's a case that they've heard it, but they just don't understand it, then in that case, for sure, I think that it's beneficial for them to ask for the teacher to explain it in a different way. At the same time, I do also think that it's normal to listen to a live class and not necessarily understand everything. I feel like this idea of needing to understand 100% of everything that's said is probably unrealistic, not just for kids, but for adults even. I wouldn't say that if I sat with my teacher and my teacher's explaining hadith to me, that necessarily every single point the teacher said, I would have completely understood it. And maybe I would have asked the question and maybe the teacher would answer my question and maybe they wouldn't. That's been the case in studying Islam for the last, 1400 years. That the person listens to the teacher, they may understand, they may not. They ask a question, it may get answered, it may not. So in that sense, I think that it's that the kids shouldn't worry about it. Like that's what I mean. I don't mean to to sort of say that it's wrong for them to ask, not at all. But not to worry about it. Like it's okay. If you didn't catch it the first time round, that's why, or that's one of the benefits in repetition in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ used to repeat everything he said 3 times. generally speaking, if he was teaching something, he would repeat 3 times so that the people would understand. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats many times in the Qur'an. The lessons are repeated in different ways and different forms so that we can understand them. So I kind of think it's a case of teaching the kids that it's okay. It's okay for them if they don't necessarily understand every single thing. But again, the parents are really helpful there. Like sometimes it's just a language thing. Like, for example, I used a difficult word. Maybe I said like, I used a particular word that the children didn't understand. And I would hope they would ask about it and say, Ustadh, I didn't understand that word. But sometimes the question might get lost. So they can ask their parents, what does that word mean? The parents say, okay, this is what it means. Okay, I've understood now. So that's another way of dealing with it, inshallah. Okay. Okay. All right. The second, sorry, I was kind of confused. This was the second question. So my daughter has 5 ajza left to finish her hifth of the Qur'an. Allahumma barik. May Allah Azza wa Jal make it easy for her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for all your efforts in helping her with that. I heard from people she'll have to re-memorize 2 to 3 times again to achieve perfect hifth. Is this true? She also aspires to learn other qira'at. When is it advisable for her to start that? And when will I be able to teach her even though I only know Hafs and Asim? Okay, so the first thing is, I do think that practically it may be the case that the person who's memorizing will have to go over their memorization again to make it really strong, to have dabt, precision in memorization. And sometimes 2 to 3 times, sometimes more than that. I would love to say that it took me 2 to 3 times, but I think I would be lying if I said 2 to 3 times. I think maybe 5 to 6 times might be more realistic. But that actually shows that, if I was being honest with myself, it shows that my method of hifth was not really right. If the method of hifth is good, like really good, and the emphasis in hifth is dabt, is precision, then it may be that they don't need to go over it again at all. That's if the way that the hifth is being done is with an emphasis on precision. But it's true that the majority of people who do hifth, the emphasis is not on, it's not precision. The emphasis is on getting past it. Okay, you know it, alhamdulillah, you read the surah, 1 mistake, 2 mistake, no problem, inshallah, carry on. And so we kind of get to a situation where we know that they don't really recall the hifth that they've done. And the way to solve that is to make mistakes higher priority than new hifth. You need to make like errors, mistakes, bits that have been kind of are not strong, to make those higher priority than the hifth itself. But many teachers don't do it, many madaris don't do it. So at the end of the day, it's okay. You may have to go through it again, but it does get easier. And the student themselves, even if if the student themselves realizes how important precision in memorization is, they themselves will start to go through that process naturally of, look, I need to revise and I need to read a certain number of ajza every day. And the way I would do it very briefly is, I would say, if you've memorized the Qur'an or most of the Qur'an and you want to keep your hifth, I honestly believe you really need to be looking at or working towards reading 3 ajza every day, as much as you can. If you're struggling with 3 ajza every day, maybe you can go as far as finishing the Qur'an every 14 days, any twice a month, or 15 days, every twice a month. But I really honestly personally find that finishing the Qur'an in any longer time than that the precision will go. It may not be true for everybody. Maybe, kids, they definitely got better memorization than we have. So maybe it's the case that they can manage with 1 juz a day, but it's hard. And honestly, I think 2 to 3 juz a day, 3 would be ideal. 3 would be ideal, but even two would be okay to be able to keep that memorization in place and to keep the precision there. And then as they're going through those 3 every day, when they start to come across mistakes and areas where they're not comfortable, that now gets priority, right? I'm fixing Surah Al-Rahman because I've found that while I'm reading Surah Al-Rahman in the Mus'haf or I'm reading it from memory, I know Sheikh Abdul Rahman, he swaps between, so if he's reading three ajza every day, half of it he will read from memory and half he'll read from the Mus'haf, and then he'll swap the next day for so that every month he would read, for example, twice from memory and once from the Mus'haf, or twice from the Mus'haf and once from memory, for example. And any point where you see that your memorization is stalling or it's got some mistakes, that's where it's right, okay, I'm going to fix that surah. And again, once it's fixed and it's part of the 2 to 3 juz a day, inshallah, it won't go away. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, it won't go away. As for the qira'at, I think it's perfectly fine to start. I think with only five ajza left, it's worth just putting the focus on finishing them. But I think it's perfectly fine to start memorizing other things once you get past half of the Qur'an or even 10 juz of the Qur'an. It's okay for you to start memorizing some other things. And from the other things you could start memorizing, if you have experience or if you are interested in qira'at, is to start memorizing a Shaltibiyya. For example, the poem, which is over 1,000 lines. And it doesn't mean that she needs to memorize a Shaltibiyya before she finishes the Qur'an. But just starting it could be a good start. It's just something to start a little bit, every day. Because it's going to take time to do 1,000 lines of poetry, especially when we're not accustomed to the language or we're not accustomed to poetry. It could take, maybe it would be, a year, 2 years to memorize, perhaps. So in that sense, it's not a bad thing to sort of start it just a little bit every day, even a line a day or 2 lines a day. It's not a bad thing to start it, inshallah. The way to access the qira'at is not through a Shaltibiyya to begin with. Even though a Shaltibiyya is the normal way people go, but the way to access them to begin with is actually to memorize the second qira'ah the way you memorize the first. So, for example, for my second qira'ah, I did, or I'm doing, Warsh and Nafi', and it's just memorized like Hafs. I started from Surah Al-Baqarah, Ali Imran, and then off we go, all the way. And I did just Amma at the back, but I like that, all the way through the Qur'an, just memorizing it like Hafs. However, the last part of the question was that the parent was saying that I'm not, myself, I've only memorized Hafs and Asim, or I only read Hafs and Asim. I would say it would be really hard. It would be really, really hard to help her. You could listen to her, but it would be really, really hard to correct her if you were not familiar with the qira'ah. So I would say in that sense, it's definitely worth getting her a teacher. If it's not available in person, online. And online, it's really reasonable. The prices are reasonable from somewhere like Egypt. And to say, that, she's basically wanting to do, for example, Warsh and Nafi', then it's going to be way, way better for her to have a teacher, because the rules are so different and the options for mistakes are different as well. It's not just mistakes in the words, in the pronunciation, in the rules of tajweed that are different from one to the other, for example. So yeah, there are, it would be really hard to teach your children riwayah of the Qur'an, which you didn't know yourself. It would be tough. You could help them. Like, for example, if they read to their teacher once a week, and the day before you listen to them and kind of like, you can get a Warsh Mus'haf and say, yeah, that's wrong. Yeah, no, it's not like that. The word here is not like that. You could help them like that, but some of the rules and the more kind of complicated parts would be difficult, and Allah knows best. How can we encourage our children, those that are 10 and 9 years old, to fast in the month of Ramadan? So I think with regard to encouraging our children, the best way I personally feel is to make it really exciting, to have a really amazing iftar for them, to let them have all the things they're not usually allowed to have, like the candy sweets and the whole thing that they, you can choose, take out, take away, all that stuff, let them really enjoy themselves at iftar. Honestly, that's what I did with my kids. I do think kids are different for fasting, depending on, some people find fasting easy and some people find it difficult. But I have always found with the kids that really making iftar special, it's really, really good. And also being a little bit relaxed with them during the day, like as they start to get tired at Asr time and they're fasting, go lie down, go and, listen to the Qur'an for a while, go and, let them do something beneficial, but let them, kind of relax around Asr time so it's not so hard for them. I think those are, just encouraging the kids by making them love it. And that's why there's an athar from some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum that they said, Habibullah ila ibadihi. Make the servants of Allah love Allah. And make people love the religion, make people love Allah, make the religion fun, make it, like beloved to people, make people enjoy it. So I think with kids, it's really important to make them enjoy Ramadan, suhoor as well. Don't forget, the Prophet ﷺ said, Tasahharu, فَإِنَّ فِي السَّحُورِ barakah. He said, take sahur, which is the meal, the suhoor meal. Take sahur, because in the sahur, the meal that the people eat, in the food the people eat before they fast, there's barakah. So a good sahur and inshallah an enjoyable iftar, that could be a good way to encourage them. Should we let our kids see our good deeds, since we're teaching them by action, but we also need to explain to them the concept of having secrets with Allah? So at what age do we start concealing our good deeds? Wow, that's a really good question. There's no doubt that the basic principle is that whatever you can conceal of your deeds, you should conceal from everyone. From your spouse, from your kids, from everybody. Because this is the best way to achieve ikhlas. And I don't know of any better way to achieve ikhlas than to conceal your deeds from people. Those that are meant to be concealed. Of course, there are those deeds that are not meant to be concealed, like as-salatu fil jama'ah, praying in the jama'ah, and like al-hajj wal-umrah, which are concealed from the wider community. I mean, you don't need to post it on Facebook or something, but that they are not concealed from the people, because they see you. They see you, going to Hajj, or they see you in Mecca. So there are deeds that are not, there is no option to conceal them. Even those we can conceal, we can conceal them from the wider sort of community. Like we don't need, for example, to tell the whole city that I went to Fajr prayer today. But it's enough that, the people in the masjid, of course, would see me if I attended Fajr prayer in the masjid. There are some deeds that you do in order to set an example. And the deeds you do in order to set an example can be any of the good deeds. And you do it in order for the person to see you and to learn from you and to take that example. And the dawabit for this, the kind of rules and regulations for this, are that you do it when the person is not doing it themselves and would benefit from that reminder. So for example, if your kids are already praying their sunnah prayers, their rawatib, their regular sunnah prayers, and they pray them all the time, they don't need to see you praying them. They don't need to see you praying them because they're already doing it. So there's no benefit to inspiring them to do it anymore because they're already doing it. But if they're struggling to pray their rawatib and they're not in the habit of praying them, then that's when you should show them that you're doing it so that they learn the habit of doing it alongside you. So I think that's the key. It's like the hadith about sadaqah, when the Prophet ﷺ encouraged the people to give sadaqah. And there came a man and he came with a bag full of coins and he put them in front of the people. And then the people, they all came because nobody was giving. It was a time of poverty. People were not giving anything. And so he came in front of everyone and gave, and then the people started to come and give after him. So it's when you see the person would benefit from that inspiration, then it's worthwhile. And especially with your children, it's part of tarbiyah, to show them the right way to do things and to show them the good deeds. So I think when you see that they'll benefit from it and they need it, then it's a good idea to do it. And when you see that they are doing it by themselves, then it's, in this case, you can go back to that original principle of concealing the deeds that you do. For example, even in something like charity, you see that your kids have got a generous nature. You know, they like to give to people. If somebody asks for money, they always say, can I give something? Or if there is some charity project, they always say, can I give something? So then you don't need to tell them when you give charity yourself anymore. You know, at that age now, when you've seen that they've got the habit of generosity, you don't need to say to them like, oh, I gave this much money or I gave this much money. You don't need to do that because you can see that they're doing it. But when they don't have that aspect in their nature, it might be that, look, come on, we'll give some and then you give some as well, inshallah. So they learn that habit, inshallah, and Allah knows best. Okay. Any advice to help parents deal with issues such as teenagers seeking knowledge but also falling prey to temptations, making hard for them to implement that knowledge? Teenage years are a difficult time because they are the time when desires are at their strongest. And I don't just mean desires in terms of relationships, but just generally desires for things that are haram are often at their strongest in shabab, yani the time when they are very young adults, because of their sort of hormonal state, because of the fact that they are young and they have their energy, and because of the fact that they don't quite have the wisdom to direct that energy in the right way. This is an age where kids have the potential to go a little bit off the rails. As a parent, I guess there are ways to deal with that separately. But in terms of knowledge, never, ever, ever stop them from seeking knowledge because of that. Because if I see a young guy and that young guy is doing something wrong, but I see him come into the classes, wallahi, I don't have any worry for him at all, inshallah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah ta'ala, Allah is going to take that person and Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to bring them to the haqq, bi'idhnillah. Because that person is making an effort for the sake of Allah and they're learning knowledge, and inshallah ta'ala, they will be, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, be able to implement it. We do still remind them and we warn them that, look, don't be from the people who learn things and don't practice them. And I think in this, I would distinguish between two types of people. One type of people is a child or a young guy or a young girl who is not making any effort to implement the knowledge at all. And this one is the one you get scared for. There's no effort to implement it. It's just like, I don't care. The knowledge I get, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't listen to it. I don't believe it. Or that's really dangerous. That's where we have to start saying, look, there needs to be some big changes. But somebody who takes on board that knowledge and tries but fails at times, كل ابن آدم خطاء all the children of Adam make mistakes. وَخَيْرُ الْخَطَّائِينَ التَّوَّابُونَ. And the best of those who frequently make mistakes are those who frequently repent. So I wouldn't be as worried. It's not that I don't worry at all, because obviously we worry for every sin, but I wouldn't be as worried to see somebody seeking knowledge and trying to implement it and falling short sometimes, versus someone who, even the adults, I get really worried when I have someone come into my class and there's absolutely no effort to implement anything. You know, the same situation they were in 2 years ago is the same situation they're in today. And I still wouldn't stop them coming, and I wouldn't stop them learning, because that's, you know, inshallah, what's going to bring them towards practicing. But I have some really harsh words for them. You know, look, you cannot just keep coming to the classes and 2 years later you're in the same place. This is the situation of al-maghdubi alayhim, the people that Allah's anger is upon. If you learn something, try to practice it. Oh, but akhi, my life is difficult. No problem, no issues. Let's just try. Start one thing, two things. Let's start something. But that's a little worrying. So I think just encouraging them to try to implement as much as they can, to ask Allah's forgiveness when they fall short, and not to stop, and keep their attachment to the deen, keep their love of the religion, keep them busy with the religion, because there's a lot of other things that teenagers can be busy with that is, and it can create a lot of problems for them later on, and Allah knows best. Any nasiha on introducing the salah at the age of 7 years? My son's been praying from 5ish and he calls the adhan and the iqamah for our jama'ah at home. But how to formally encourage salah, knowing the benefits of it, so at 10 he's fully engaged in salah for the right reasons. So I actually tell my kids really clearly, look, when you turn 7 Hijri, there's going to be some changes. Okay? The first thing is that mom and dad are going to call you for every salah. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. Whether Fajr is 1 a.m. and Isha is 11 p.m., no problem, we're going to call you. Sometimes you might not answer. Okay, we'll talk about it, we'll figure out why. Maybe you need to go to bed earlier. Maybe you need to, you need something to change your routine in some way. But we'll talk about it. If you don't manage every salah, like a 7-year-old who doesn't manage Fajr at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., yeah, fair enough, no problem, inshallah. But you still pray Fajr when you wake up. Still come back, it's 3 a.m., 4 a.m., you woke up, come on Fajr. And still they try. But as they get older, it becomes clear that we're getting a bit more strict with them. And what we ask the 8-year-old is a little bit more, like, come on, it's Fajr time. Come on now, Fajr. 9 years old, listen, it's Fajr time. And then we tell them, at 10 years old, there's going to be consequences if you don't get up for Fajr. There's going to be punishments, and there's going to be consequences. So they understand that that there's something expected from them now. Like, they've got an understanding that now there's an expectation that you guys, things are changing for you. Like my little one, my youngest one has been telling me that I'm getting to 10 years Hijri and I'm getting to 10 years Hijri, and when 10 years, even sometimes I'll call him for Fajr and he might even say that, I'm not 10 years Hijri yet. So the point is they understand. They understand that there's a progression of what's required from them as they get older. And they understand that there's going to be, as they get older, they need to develop the habit. Now, intention and sincerity is something that you develop through the period of tamyiz. And tamyiz is the period where the child knows the difference between right and wrong. So by 7 years old, they know something's wrong. They know something's right. But they might not have a fully developed understanding of niyyah, of intention. And so if that's the case, then it's okay for them to say, for you to sort of encourage them with rewards. Look, we'll give you this. If we make a prayer chart for you, if all of your prayers are ticked, then we're going to give you a reward, inshallah. If you manage the full week of prayers without missing any on time, we're going to give you a reward. But we still tell them that that reward is not why we pray. That reward is something to encourage you to have it, but actually the reward from Allah, that's why we pray. So as they get older and closer towards adulthood, they recognize more that the rewards are from Allah, and they have more of an understanding that I have to do this for Allah, not for my mum and dad. But at 7 to 10 years old, it's okay to give them incentives and encouragement for that, inshallah. How to improve my child during Ramadan. So we're doing okay with the questions. We're not doing too bad. Inshallah ta'ala, short time we'll be able to finish. How to improve my child during Ramadan. So I think the first thing is for all of us as a family to chat about what does Ramadan mean. And I did this in my kids' class. You can watch it. It was on my Muhammad Tim YouTube channel. And it wasn't recorded, right? It wasn't recorded. Subhanallah. Qaddarallahu wa ma sha fa'al. I just did it impromptu because I wasn't planning to do the class that day. It was cancelled, but like about 20 kids came anyway. So I said, okay, I have to do something. So I actually said to them, I want each of you to tell me what is Ramadan about. And almost all of them gave the wrong answer. They gave the standard answer that like 70% of Muslims will give. Why do we fast in Ramadan? To remember poor people, to be more aware of what the poor go through, to think about the poor people, to understand the blessings of our food. And that is not the reason we fast in Ramadan. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a very good purpose and it's a very, it's something Islam tells us to do generally, to be aware of the poor. But it's not the reason we fast. It's not the reason that Allah mentioned in the Qur'an. What Allah said is, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So you develop taqwa. So we asked the kids, what's taqwa then? Allah said, Ramadan is so you can get taqwa. All right, what's taqwa? The kids say, I don't know what's taqwa. If I told you that taqwa, and I said, I'll give you a clue. If you went in the kitchen and you dropped a glass on the floor, and the glass smashed all over the floor, and what would you do? Like, what's the first thing you would do? So normally the first thing I would do is step away, or I would put my shoes on, or I would go put slippers on. I would, something to protect my feet. Okay. If I told you this is taqwa, can you tell me what taqwa is in Islam? So they think about it, and sometimes they get it right and wrong. So the idea behind taqwa is protecting yourself from Allah's punishment. So then the question comes, how do you protect yourself from Allah's punishment? And they say, okay, we can protect ourselves by praying, by making dua, okay, but what's the formula? What's the shield that you can carry to protect you from Allah's punishment? And the answer is every single good deed that you do with the right intention and according to the sunnah, that is a reason to be protected from Allah's punishment. And every single bad thing you do, that is a reason to be potentially exposed to Allah's punishment. And so now Ramadan is all about increasing in good and decreasing in bad. And Allah's, then we say to them, okay, how does Ramadan make this easy? How has Allah made it easy to do this in Ramadan? So one of the things is the suffidat al-shayateen. The shayateen are chained up. And that doesn't mean they disappear, but their influence on you is reduced. So it's easier to develop good habits in Ramadan. It's easier to build up protection against Allah's punishment through doing more good deeds and keeping away from haram because the shayateen are chained. Okay, what else? We talked about, for example, why is it that leaving your food and your drink helps you to keep away from the haram in general? Like, why is it that leaving food and drink helps you keep away from backbiting? Because it teaches you self-control. It teaches you to leave something for the sake of Allah and to leave something you enjoy for the sake of Allah. So leaving something you enjoy for the sake of Allah, which is halal for you normally, that allows you to develop self-control. So we talked to them about self-control. What does it mean to be in control of yourself? Why is it sometimes you have to give up something nice for the sake of Allah? And so on. And that helps them to understand how to develop a taqwa, which is the purpose of Ramadan. And then we say to them, if the purpose of Ramadan is a taqwa, and that's the reason why we fast, then what is it? Where do people go wrong after Ramadan? After Ramadan, what people do is they stop doing all those things. So they made themselves a shield to protect themselves from Allah's punishment, but then they threw it away when Ramadan finished. So what can we do that we inshallah are going to make changes, and those changes are going to be lifelong changes inshallah, that last all the way through our days and months and the days and weeks and months until next Ramadan. What can we learn? How can we train ourselves to do more good deeds and keep away from haram? For example, if we stopped watching movies in Ramadan, or we stopped listening to music in Ramadan, could we make that a lifelong change? That we don't go back to it at all after Ramadan? Because this is what's going to shield us from Allah's punishment by Allah's permission. So that kind of discussion I think is really helpful. And then I think doing Ramadan activities with the kids is really useful. I hope AMAU is going to have a Ramadan program. I'm hoping they're going to have a Ramadan program. Usually we do. And I hope it will be open to some of the AMAU junior students as well, inshallah, so that they will be able to learn sort of, we had like a support program, encouraging each other to memorize, encouraging each other to do good deeds, keeping a track of what each other was doing and trying to sort of encourage people to do more and stuff like that. So it was alhamdulillah, really, really beneficial. So I hope we can do something for the kids on the mentorship program, inshallah ta'ala, in Ramadan. As my children grow older, I found it difficult to find appropriate books. How do you juggle between promoting the love of reading while being cautious of the content they read? Well, that's really difficult. My kids love reading. They're all avid readers and they read everything and anything. And so I also found it very difficult as they get older. One thing I did is to compile a list of like a reading list of books which I think are reasonably okay. They don't have swear words in them. They don't have, they don't have too much in them that's wrong. But even then, you're gonna get the odd, because even if you get books that don't have bad language, there's gonna be relationships in there, even if it's books with, there are gonna be things in there that shouldn't be in there. So I made a list and for a while that worked quite well with the kids. And then it got to the stage where I just started to say, look, we're going to have to just edit, edit things out that is no good for them. And say, look, this book or this author is off limits because the stuff that they write is just not appropriate. And then I think after that, it's really about, encouraging them as much as possible to read things that benefit them. Because much as they enjoy reading novels and as much as they enjoy, that aspect of reading, it doesn't have a great deal of benefit in it. And the older they get, the more the harms get. So it's difficult. It would be great if we had good Islamic content to give them. There isn't a great deal. And then, the hope is to just transition them more and more into the Islamic reading and to try to busy them with that as much as possible. But all I did is two things. I made a list of books that I felt were reasonable. Some of them were older, books that were written a long time ago, because those books tend to be more, the things that in them that are wrong tend to be a lot less than things that are written in modern times. Sometimes books that were written for young adults and that have some of the bad language and things taken out and stuff. So we made a list of books, and then on the other side, we we sort of like managed to censor some of them and like just delete, like ebooks, managed to just delete pages out of them and things like that. But it got to the point where even that will not last you that long before you just say, look, after that, you're getting to the stage where the stuff that is there to read is just not appropriate. And that's where you have to kind of draw the line. And Allah knows best. Any plans on doing an AMAU retreat for dads and sons or moms and daughters? Well, I would love to do it. I originally started doing retreats with legacy camps. And I hope to continue those, inshallah. I don't know whether AMAU will do like a knowledge-based. Legacy tends to do with Legacy, I tend to do the activities like the archery and the diving and the horse riding and that type of stuff. And we really were, before COVID, working on doing one that would involve dads and daughters. And it would have to be like really, the logistics were just a nightmare, because obviously we can't be involved in anything that the girls do except perhaps giving a lecture or something. But other than that, we can't be involved. So it was logistically difficult, but then COVID came in the way. I hope it could get started again. I think if AMAU does one, it's more likely that AMAU would do one which is just knowledge-based, like a Dawah. And it could be, involving, dads and sons and mums and daughters for sure, inshallah. I hope that we'll be able to do more lectures in place. And I know that it's a plan. It's a bit of a long-term plan at the moment because we're still in that space where we're just getting things done online. But in the long term, we would love to have a physical location where people could come and attend durus and halaqat, inshallah. Okay, what would you recommend if the kids have missed 2 months of class? How should they catch up? I think, first of all, focus on the live classes and don't rush too much on the catch-up content. Focus on the live classes and catch up slowly. Even if you do one catch-up class and one live class every week, it's more than enough. If you can do 2, brilliant, but otherwise, one catch-up class, one live class, one catch-up class, one live class. Inshallah ta'ala, it won't take very long before they've caught up everything. And if there's a break, I don't know like the schedule, but if there's a break in the schedule, like where they can catch up more, then maybe they can do more in the break. When the term finishes, before the start of the new term, for example, they could do more in that time. But otherwise, understanding the knowledge is more important than anything, inshallah. Okay. At home, we have a halaqah as a family almost every day. We talk about Allah and other Islamic topics like fiqh, seerah, and aqeedah on almost a daily basis. We mention Allah and other things whenever we get an opportunity at home and outside. Our daughter attends AMAU Junior and we only allow Islamic lectures. However, she doesn't follow what we teach, especially when she's alone or with friends. How do we ensure that Allah's commands are ingrained in her? And how can we ensure she's conscious of Allah? So it's a really, really, really beautiful question. And I think it probably depends on the age a little bit, but I'll try to give some generic kind of advice. I think the first thing is to keep good communication with her. When you see her fall short, talk to her about it. There is a place for discipline for sure. And we all have to discipline our kids. There's a place for, look, you're grounded and, you're not having any gadgets and you're not allowed to read. And there's a place for that. But there's also a place for sitting down with your kids and saying, look, I saw that you were with your friends and you didn't listen to what we said. And you did such and such a thing that we talked about that it's not allowed. What happened? And really understanding where they're coming from is the first step to changing it. But it's really hard to change if we don't understand where the kids are coming from. And them attending halaqat or them attending a family reminder, it doesn't always mean that they are necessarily taking it in. So asking them like, what's the problem? that's one aspect, talking to them. And I honestly, I couldn't emphasize it enough. It's so important. With older children, the older they get, the more important it becomes. That you talk to them, engage with them, and ask them, look, I'm not going to shout at you. I'm disappointed that I saw you, for example, listening to music with your friends. And we've spoken about why it's haram. We've spoken about it together as a family, and we as a family don't do it. So I'm disappointed that you are with your friends doing that. So you want to tell me about it? What happened? No, I don't see why it's wrong, and we've not talked about it, and I don't see why you're so strict on me. Okay, so now we know where the person's coming from. They're coming from the point that either shubuhat or shahawat. Either shubha in the sense that they don't think it's really wrong. Or shahwa, they know it's wrong, but they're doing it anyway. So understanding where the problem is key. Sitting down, look, with your friends, I'm disappointed. We spoke about backbiting and you were backbiting with your friends, and what happened? Talk to me about it. Tell me what's going on. What are you thinking about? We did a lesson as a family on it. Did you not listen? What happened? Just talk to me. No punishments. Just tell me what was going on. And try to understand. That's one thing. The second thing is that friends make a big difference. Like the famous proverb says, as-sahibu sahib. The person who is your friend, they are the ones who pull you in one direction or the other. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how many times in the Qur'an is it mentioned the role of the people around you? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself was told to be careful to who is around him. وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Keep yourself around the people who remember Allah. Don't let yourself go to bad friends. And if that was the Prophet ﷺ, how about others? Then on top of that, there is, the fact that the friend can be a reason for a person to go to Jahannam yawm al-qiyamah. يا ليتني لم أتخذ فلانا خليلا لقد أضلني عن الذكر بعد إذ جاءني. How I wish I didn't take this person as my friend. They took me away from the remembrance of Allah after it came to me. Now a person may say, how do I change my kids' friends? Because my kids are, they don't let me change their friends. But you don't necessarily, it's not even about changing. Yes, there is discipline to be said, like, no, I'm not happy with this person. I don't want to see you with them again. But there's also the aspect of introducing them to good people. Introducing them to other friends that you don't see this negative behavior from. And then I think there is the issue of teaching them muraqabatullah. And this is so important, teaching them that Allah is watching you. That even if your mom and dad don't see what you're doing, but Allah sees what you're doing. And even if maybe they don't fully appreciate that in the beginning, it's really important. I always remember the story of Umar radiallahu an, with that girl who her mother was telling her to mix milk and water and to put extra water in the milk so they could make more money. And she said to her mother, didn't Umar prohibit this? And the mother said, where is Umar now? He's not here now, just put the water in the milk. She said, Umar is not here now, but the Lord of Umar is not watching now, but the Lord of Umar is watching now. That's what we want to teach our kids. Mom and dad might not be there, but the Lord of mom and dad are watching you. And so Allah knows what you're doing. And then teaching them how to make tawbah and istighfar. Teaching them how to, so many times we teach our kids, don't do this, haram, don't do this. But we don't teach them what to do if you do something haram, knowing that they will do haram things. They have to. La mahala, there's no way for them to escape it. So teaching them how to make istighfar, astaghfirullah, teaching them, that it's between you and Allah, making tawbah, turning back to Allah. These are really important. It's not easy with kids, but small changes make a big difference. Even small steps in the right direction. Don't stop the halaqat you're doing, the dhikr you're doing, the things you're doing as a family. It sounds amazing. Don't stop it. But just have that conversation and try to understand why did it happen. Sometimes it happened because you as a parent, we gave the kids a little bit too much freedom. We gave them a little bit too much room to maneuver. So sometimes we explain to them, look, when I gave you freedom to go out whenever you wanted, we saw a few things that were not good. So let's step back a little bit and let's keep it now between this time and this time, or let's keep it for this friend and this friend, because that's better for you, and it's better for you in the sight of Allah. And inshallah ta'ala, that those baby steps will make a big difference, inshallah ta'ala. So that, inshallah ta'ala, was my best attempt to answer the questions. I hope that I was able to answer them in a way that was beneficial. They were tough questions. There are some times where you feel like the question needs a halaqah. It needs its own dars for it. And sometimes also there are questions where there are difficulties with kids that require sabr. It's not like there is an instant solution to them, but just with sabr and patience, things will improve, inshallah. I think the fact that your kids are engaged in AMAU Junior is amazing. And I've personally, wallahi, I've thoroughly enjoyed the AMAU Junior program. I've really enjoyed talking to the kids. I haven't talked to everybody yet, but I have managed to have conversations with a number of the kids, older and younger, as part of the monthly programs. And wallahi, it's been amazing. Wallahi, it's been inspiring to see the kids and to see young adults. A lot of them are not kids, but to see them, and the progress they're making, and the ideas they have, and the motivation they have going forward. And even those that are struggling a little bit, to even engage with them and talk to them. And we try to do more and more of that, inshallah. And that's what Allah Azza wa Jal has made easy for me to mention this evening. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.